any follow-up questions, please just come down, ask them a question. They're all more than willing to do so, and they all very much want to talk about things they value as important. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass the microphone over. Candidates, if you could just start by first saying what your name is, what you're running for, and then I'll have about a minute or so to ask your follow-up questions. There you go.
Am I good to go? Hello, I'm Manola. I'm running for Vice President Societies and Communities. Am I good to start? 1 minute? Yeah?
Just go on, don't worry.
Okay. Hello. So if you don't know me, I'm a student publicity assistant in the SU. So I do the marketing with my lovely candidate Liz. Hello. And we help write all the captions and do Instagram posts for the SU, which means I know a lot about the campaigns in SU and being very well versed in them. I know their weaknesses and their strengths. I've also had the opportunity to run my own campaign, my own rebranding. I rebranded Q to House. So I've worked a lot with different campaign offices and the venues team to make sure it's accessible and intersectional and focusing on all different communities and how we can represent the queer community. I also sit on EVE's executive committee. We're currently planning the SVMAs and I'm on the deciding panel. And I also was co-president of Feminist Society last year. I'm also really focused on tackling sexual violence from an intersectional lens. I think that's something that the SU really lack. I've been working with Time to Act for the last 2 years. It's important to look at lots of different social contexts, and I feel like that's something that SU doesn't do. For example, they focus a lot on getting spiked in clubs, which very well may happen. But for example, someone who's prohibited from drinking from a Muslim background or any religious background might never find themselves in that situation, but still might be, a victim of sexual violence. And I think if we focus so much on a narrow, set of vulnerabilities, we make the SU not a place for support for all. And also, I want to turn that into a tiering badge. That's a mandatory tiering badge.
Sorry, just to cut you off there. Just in the interest of trying to get through all the candidates.
Yes.
If you'd like to, she's definitely got a lot to say. So at the end,
yes.
If you ask any questions to follow up, we just pass it on to Becca.
Sorry, let me know if it's a minute past. Thank you very much.
I'm a bit hard to manage.
Okay, so hey everyone, I'm Abdul Samad. I'm running for international VP, the international VP. Ooh, I'm quite nervous now. So my first priority what about my past experiences? I've worked as a student rep for the medical engineers for the past 2 years. And then currently I'm working as an exchange student officer for the SU basically. It's quite hard to balance between both, but I try the best as I can. So my priorities, I'm just going to be straight now. So my priorities basically is working on the visa, the visa route, for example, in which some international students actually struggle with. The problem is that first years doesn't know what are the routes when they graduate, for example. And also the problem is that these rules or laws are going to change by 2027, so we need to have a clear route of students, what they're going to do after they graduate, and how they get their visas, or a graduate visa or a skilled worker visa, for example. So that's the first priority. The second priority actually is working on a faster calendar. So, for example, checking the eligibility for students doesn't have to take a whole month, for example. Instead, you could check the eligibility, for example, for the guarantee scheme, and then you could work on the process itself. And we could also work on, the problem is it's hard to get an individual staff for internationals. Because most of the guarantee schemes are actually hard to attain, and the guarantors mostly has to be a homeowner. So I was thinking to make a list of guarantors from the staff themselves that are willing to volunteer for that.
Okay, we'll cut there. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I tell you what we're going to do is we go forward.
Is
Anyone in the room
the minute on?
Yeah,
cool.
If we go forward, what we're going to do is I'm going to steal something from any of you who don't know. I'm in MUN. What we're going to steal from. I'm just going to do a little tap like that.
Okay.
When I do that, you guys will know that there's about 10 seconds left. So we just pass on to the next person. That'll tap.
Hello, I'm Lee. I'm going for VP Societies and Communities. is support, campaign, sustain. I will support LGBTQ+ people in this time of polarisation by continuing to host events such as the LGBTQ+ Showcase, encouraging awareness talks about queer identities, and I will stand tall in our commitment to protecting LGBTQ+ rights as their human rights. I will campaign for more accessible mental health and well-being support for students, so we have more options than a 5-month wait for just 4 meetings. I will campaign to create a new volunteer role, the Wellbeing Buddy. It will work similarly to the student mentor role, but will not be course specific. I also plan to campaign for a support system for neurodivergent students regardless of a diagnosis. And finally, sustain. I will promote personal sustainability such as thrifting and upcycling, as well as repairing and maintaining our clothes and belongings. This will not only help the environment, but will also help students to save money, because the world knows we don't have enough of it. Thank you.
So hi everyone, my name is Samantha King and I'm running to be the next Women's Officer. For me, this role is about one thing, and that's making sure that every woman on campus has someone in their corner who will advocate for them. My main priority is campaigning against sexual violence, both on campus and online. I want to push for a real zero-tolerance policy that covers all forms of harassment and violence, including mandatory training, because nobody should feel unsafe at their own university. I also want to create a reporting system that is clear and easy to use that will be taken seriously. This includes the university providing transparency data on things that we have yet to receive. Survivors have a right to know what's happening within their own university. I also want better support for survivors, because no one should have to deal with anything alone. And I also want to create uplifting spaces where women can learn about their bodies, from sexual health to period products, without any shame or judgment, as it is really hard to find information as a woman. I also want to keep campaigning for intersectionality, making sure that women from all backgrounds feel included and represented in everything that the SU does. I'm here to make promises. I'm not here to make promises that I won't keep. I'm here to actually listen, advocate, and make changes that you actually want to see.
Hi, I'm Nia Montrose. I'm also going for Women's Officer, and I agree with pretty much everything that you just said. But some of the things that I also want to campaign for is diversity, inclusion, and safety. And the reason why I want to do that is because I'm an LGBT woman myself, and I know way too many people, not just women, people, my friends, my family, your friends, your family, who have all been stuck in a situation where they can't be helped, where they want help and they don't know where to go. So one of the things I want to do is I want to bring in a very clear security poster that can be put in bedrooms and kitchens for the next year's students, which has security number, clearly stated on it, and a list of services that they can go to so they know what to do in what situation. So we've all been stuck in a situation where we don't quite know who we're supposed to go to. I also want to work very closely with the LGBT officer and the anti-racism officer to try and figure out together the options that we can create for the students we're representing and the safety measures that we can take to just make our SU a beacon of safety, respect and inclusion, because our SU is supposed to be a place where we're all supposed to have fun and go to YOLO and have a great time, and part of that is mandatory training for spiking, consent, sexual violence, and
We'll put it there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Monks, and I'm also running for Women's Officer. What you both said is amazing, and I completely agree with you. One of my priorities are period product accessibility and dignity. I think it's important that we actually know where our period products are, that they're sustainable, and that we can use them if you've got heavy flows or light flows. And also, just like an open conversation about it, I would promote an app. I'd create an app, sorry, I'm a bit nervous, about where you'd have these. And I think that we should just have an open conversation with our peers, as well as menstruation stations. Not only this, but sexual violence and consent is just a massive issue, and I think that we need to, all SU staff need to be trained on it. We all need to talk about it. As a survivor myself, I have been failed by my secondary school, and I feel like it's so important that education take it seriously and listen to survivors. And we need change now. We need transparent data which represent all identities, all communities. You know, it's not acceptable. The data isn't representative, and I will not stand for it. Not only that, but representation as a neurodivergent, I believe it's so important that we hold events that celebrate LGBTQ societies, Black Women's Month. month, history, everything. So I think it's really, really important that we're going across like a whole range of issues here.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Lakshmi and I'm running for Ruaidhrí International Room. Hello. So being an international student coming abroad is pretty much exciting and interesting, but then there are a lot of issues that could be associated with it as well, such as visa issues, and then mental health support, and then also figuring out how fast or slow the admin delays can be. So there are 3 things that I'm going to run for. First and foremost is the mental health support, which is not just for international but for everybody over here. It's pretty tough to access mental health support. If some of you have already accessed it, you might have known how tough it is to get one. So I believe that the university needs to be faster and more accessible when it comes to such, and it doesn't need to take 10 weeks or longer than that for somebody to get the support. Second one is faster admin systems. It sometimes can take really long to get CAS bank statements or even just a council tax certificate, as I have gone through, and this could actually hinder your role with the embassy or whatsoever. And the third one, and the most important one, is that we come to university with a degree, but not with the guarantee of a job security. And as amazing and as generous the Student Futures is, we need more than that as international students, and we need a specialized career support. So that is where I am vouching and hoping that the university goes for a career support that is specialized for international students and gives out visa guidance and assistance as well. We are here.
Thank you, sorry.
Thank you so much.
Hi guys, I'm Margaret and I'm running for VP Sports and AU President. You may know me if you follow the Tap or E+ TikTok. So I'll just go through my manifesto points really quickly. So my first one was to improve varsity. So by doing this I want to give free early tickets to athletes and reduce their fees to compete as well. So make sure that they get their tickets first so they don't, sorry I'm losing my words, so they're all able to compete. There's a lot of teams wanting to compete this year, and also making sure they get more funding. There's a lot of teams aren't able to compete because they don't get funding for varsity. I also want to make sure student media have priority over other media outlets at varsity as well. Grants are first for the teams. Second one is I want to help change the report and support system for sports teams. Currently you go through student cases, but it doesn't work, and I want to cut out the middleman and make sure that people are able to get access to help for reporting harassment and also the pressures of high-level sports. And the third thing was I wanted a Welsh rep for every sport, and then the other thing was IMG, making sure their matches don't get cancelled and making sure they get a proper spot at the Freshers' Fair, and using the other places that we have that we don't use to give them more matches.
Hi everyone, I'm Lizzie. I work with Nala, I'm an SPA as well. I also have bartender Jolo, so you might recognise me from there. I'm running for VP undergrad, and my top 3 priorities are
Want to push someone else from back here? Yeah, that's fine.
Hi there, I'm Nodi. I'm running for VP Societies and Communities. I've been at the university involved in different societies over several years. I've been on society exec committees, president exec committees, and postgrad exec committees. I have a few plans, few priority categories, which is inclusivity, voice, and accessibility. I want to make sure that the university encourages students to engage, postgraduate students to engage with societies more, and mature students to engage with societies more. I also want to give students a voice. That means from student media to Time to Act to Palestine protests. I want students to have the accessibility to make sure that their voice is heard. Also with Time to Act as well, I want a full-time Time to Act officer in the SU. And also my final policy is accessibility. I'd like to actually have an accessible rating for each building in the SU and the university. So please, if you have any more questions on my policies, please give Nodi a phone.
Hi everyone, I'm Lola. I'm running for VP Sport and AU President. I'm currently Barbell Press and I'm AU Zec as well. Next year I want to have more of a physical presence in sports in Cardiff. And I also, as well as having like office hours for anyone to come and talk to me, I also want to go to the committees and to the different sports. So I'd attend weekly like trainings with them, and so I'd go to different sport every week, and then that would also help to me to get to know people, them to get to know me, and then also can shine a light on some of the smaller clubs who might not get as much kind of show time and like social media and stuff. And then I also want to like have the IMG also be on my exec as well, because I think it's important that they should be included in that as well. My top 3 priorities are to tackle sexual violence by deploying some anti-spiking scrunchies and also create a new report and support system for clubs, improving accessibility to clubs such as with costs, so doing second-hand kit sales, and also keeping YOLO affordable, pushing free entry into the 11 PM. Thank you.
Good afternoon everyone, my name is Lloyd. I'm running for VP Sports and AU Press as well. I'm the president of the Lacrosse Club this year, and my 3 priorities are I want to make consent and bystander training compulsory for all committees in sports. I've been to contact because my eyes are sort of open to it, and I think that it's a really important aspect of sports, and it's probably not talked about enough. The well-being officers have too much to do by themselves. So expand that to the entire committee. I want to make varsity free for athletes. After all, the day would be the same without them. So I think, out of fairness, they should be free. And I also want to make, YOLO a key job for athletes on Wednesday. It's a sports night. That's how Wednesday started. That's why Wednesday is the day. I think it's only fair that if you've been playing away, you go straight to the front. Thank you.
Hey, I'm James. I'm running for Vice President and Graduate. My first proposal is to make the university listen to the Students' Union. Currently, for example, Cardiff students from Palestine passed a motion saying that protests should be protected and the university got an injunction banning it. So my plan is to give the university until this time next year to comply with the 32 policy motions which have been passed by students democratically, or else we will be doing a token referendum of no confidence in the University Executive Board. Secondly, I want to implement all the policies in those 32 motions. They, for example, include inclusivity, discrimination, travel around campus, they're all included in those motions. The second commitment is to tackle the cost of living. A quarter of students have nothing or less at the end of each week. So I want to bring down, for example, lottery bills for first-year students, as they have done in Newcastle and Southampton universities. My third pledge is for more support for neurodivergent students. When students arrive at university, they often find that they are neurodivergent, so we want to make support comprehensive and also review assessment submission policies which also disproportionately affect international students, according to Cardiff Uni. My final pledge is if we disaffiliate from the National Union of Students, we have a historic opportunity to build an alternative. So I will be spearheading those efforts with other students' unions which disaffiliate to end the NUS's monopoly over the UK political voice.
We'll stop there, thank you. Sorry.
Okay,
I'll be running for VP International 26-27. So my three priorities, my first one, this year I was honored and grateful to be able to open up the pantry this academic year in Kitay's and also recently in Heath Park. So my first priority is to expand the pantry, so I want students to access free fresh produce as well as gently used household items. And I would achieve this by involving local food waste charities as well as organizing drop-off and collection days for students leaving things behind when they're moving, whether it's moving into their house for next year or if it's moving on from studies. My second priority is to improve the diversity and equality on campus. So there's a couple things under this umbrella, including continuing to push for better prayer room provisions, better student visa compliance team service, reopening help law, and organizing shuttles for students moving out of residence halls. And third is to fix international tuition fees upon entry. So to lobby the university to either keep the fees the same for every single year of your degree or to have the full cost for each year of your degree up front. So there's no more hidden fee increases. With the current political climate in the UK, the international student population has been dropping, and I think Cardiff University needs to appeal itself to international students to keep this up as well. So that's how I'll appeal to them, their money sensibilities. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jephcote-Burton and I'm running through to the Your Next Week Societies and Communities. I've been in 2 different society committees and have been deeply involved with multiple other societies, so I know how this role has an impact on communities and societies. Additionally, I'm also Senate Vice Chair for the SU, so I've been working with a range of different people across the board, both to help ethnic minorities and to help the wider community. Cardiff societies and communities are where students find belonging and confidence, and they also find local friends. But right now, too many students feel priced out, burnt out, and if there aren't communities particularly, that has quite a bit of an effect. And sometimes students are unsure what to do when discrimination and harassment happens. So if elected to be society and communities, our focus on improving safe communities, real cost of living support, and making societies easier to run. Thank you very much.
Sorry guys. Okay, so I'm Lizzie, I'm running for VP undergrad, and my top 3 priorities are that I want to give tangible support to working class students by improving the bursary scheme. I think initiatives like the pantry are wonderful, but I do think students should have actual money. And I think that it should be released, that allowance should be released earlier in the term to cover summertime rent, and not decrease in years 2 and 3, because if you don't have the bursary, it does. I think it should be the first year allowance because rent doesn't go down with it. My second priority is that I want to make sure timetables come out on time, return to a decentralised system, and also give everyone, regardless of their subject, reading week. Even if you feel like you might not need one, a lot of students work alongside their studies, and I think it's unfair that people don't have enough time. And my third priority is to improve wellbeing resources. The wait times for counselling are too long, and survivors of sexual violence need immediate support. And I would plan to create a new branch of support and intervention team with a less scary name, so that people know that they can go there. Yeah, thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Sean. I'm a current VP postgrad and now I'm running for re-election. Some of the things I've worked on this year is expanding and maintaining postgraduate study space on campus, protecting PGR teaching and improving the wellbeing resources for postgraduate students. Some of the things that I'd like to do for next year if re-elected is to remove the 40-mark cap for resits across undergraduate and postgraduate courses. I want to cap postgraduate tuition fees. Tackle sexual violence within research and teaching context. I think there's something that's really important to say about the power dynamics between supervisory teams and postgraduate tutors. So I'd like to implement mandatory training for those 2 groups. And then again, just move on and expand on areas that I've worked on previously, such as strengthening the postgraduate community, improve wellbeing services, and then obviously protection of postgraduate space on campus. Thank you.
So, as I said before, you've heard a lot of different manifestos for a lot of different roles there, and I think it's important. Can we just get maybe one more round of applause for the bravery to come on stage? Presidential candidates, when they come up in a minute, that'll still be quite a brave thing to do, because they're going to be getting grilled quite a lot. But these guys came on with very short notice. They're already really informed about this with about 24 hours notice. And the exact format for it is kind of thrown to them on the spot, so that's quite hard to do. But you have heard a lot of different things there. Does anyone have any questions about anything anyone said, or any broader concerns they might have for VP or officer roles? Any questions?
Well, it's probably some questions. Come on.
James, I'm sure you have a question.
So someone said that they want to give athletes priority access to YOLO. Yeah. So, I mean, there's an argument there, isn't there? Because people will just buy the membership who have lots of money and they get access to YOLO. So, in effect, won't that end up just being, if you have more money, you get priority access to YOLO?
I think my idea for it is that it's not all AU members. It's going to be people who have played that day. Especially, I mean, the league that I play in, we play Plymouth and Marchon. So we go down to Plymouth twice. We don't get back until 10, 11 o'clock. And I know there's lots of other clubs that have that as well. Especially if you're going into the Prem as well, you're playing all over the south of the country. So I think, yeah, you definitely raised a good point. And I think that my idea for it, like I said, is that it's just players on the day rather than every AE member. I think, yeah, it's a bit unrealistic, potentially, and potentially, yeah, people not find memberships to get that.
Cool. Anyone got any follow-up questions? Yeah? I'll wait for James to book over to you with the microphone. He's going to get his cardio in today, so he's running all over the place.
It's not a follow-up question.
That's fine, you can do your individual.
I've got massive feet, terrible.
So for like all the sports candidates, a lot of you spoke about reported sport and the cultures mandatory by standard training, but how would you work to address cultures that we see commonly in sports clubs that perpetuate sexual violence?
Open to any of the sports candidates there.
So to address a bit of like a culture shift, because that's something that's quite important to me, and I've experienced it when I played hockey as well. I think it's really important to actually call the clubs out when they've kind of like done something wrong, rather than, I know there's been cases this year when maybe they've actually been rewarded for their bad behaviour, and I think that is totally unacceptable, and it's not something that I would want our sports to ever have. And I also think that like having let's talk consent kind of officers, if you like, that can kind of talk to people, especially like in the YOLO queue and things like that, and then future down the line they can like train other people, especially because I know something about before that like, you know, it needs to come from students, because then students will want to listen to it a bit more, and it has got to change from within, but hopefully if we find those people within clubs who want to create that shift, then we can kind of get the snowball rolling.
Similar to what Lola said, like being on the AU except with Lola, we've seen that like big sports clubs do get rewarded. I think they had a secret queue into YOLO, so having no tolerance to all sports. I think cricket was a scapegoat this year, and because they could use cricket, it covered up for all the other sports, so I think it should be no tolerance in all cases. It shouldn't be, cricket messed up, but now we can cover up what other teams are doing. I think also, I don't know if anyone else was in the committee meetings, they had bystander, it was like how to be a good bystander, and people were making sexual remarks in the meeting, so making it mandatory for all members as well. It's not just male sports, but like I said, we're doing support. Currently, I was asked to speak to a member of mine about harassment. I'm not trained to speak about harassment, so we need to have, like Lizzie said, someone that's there to deal with it, but also making sure it's for our students as well.
Coming on Yeah, of course.
Like I said when we spoke the other week, it takes that first year of freshers to really change the dynamic of the club, because often what you hear is about traditions and this is what we used to do, this is what we do, but actually my hope is that next year, when we get the next cohort of freshers come through clubs, if they know how to be treated right and not be bullied into things, then when they're going up in their second and third years, they become seniors in clubs, then they're going to be taught the right way to do things, not the bullying aspect, not the shoving or anything, the hazing that happens. So I think that's the biggest thing, and I think fundamentally it's not in the university's interest to call out clubs, because it is a publicity problem for them. My first year we had rugby, blue shirts were banned in the SU, but everyone knows who wears blue shirts and chinos is rugby, right? But rather than banning rugby from the SU, which would have been a publicity problem, they banned the uniform. But it doesn't make a difference in the culture. So having that zero tolerance, and even if it is a bad look for the university, well, if the university and the SU does better to say there's zero tolerance, then it won't happen and there will be a problem.
Any other questions from the audience? Anything? Yeah? James, Dr. Wood, any, please? You can probably pass it across there, so you've got some time. Okay. Pass it to India behind that one. We'll put it across the walls.
Hi, just another question for the VP for Sports. I was wondering what all of you, this is a question for all of you, had to comment about recognising dance societies as sport clubs?
I personally think that dance clubs should be recognised as sports as well, and I feel like for me that would come under the kind of like IMG and as well, like improving that recognisability of the clubs. Especially because it's a bit outrageous to call dance not sport, but then include dance sport as sport, and then not the other dance clubs. And I've got friends on like Broadway and stuff like that, these amazing comps, but don't get that same support that a lot of the other clubs do, especially probably dance sport do compared to them. But again, I'd love to, with the like takeover thing weekly, I'd love to go and do some dance lessons. I'm currently on the celebrity stuff for dance sport, which is absolutely terrifying and hard work, but I love it, and I'd love to do more of that next year, get more involved. Yeah.
It's not my top 3 points, but if any of you do follow VP Sports, you'll see number 4 on my manifesto, is to make sure that dance societies that want to be can promote themselves to sports teams. I know not all of them do. I spoke with FAD, they'd like to keep their costs down, they'd like to make it accessible, but I know that they'd like their troupe to perform at a high level. I spoke with Broadway, I've spoken with Expression as well. They said that their varsity points don't count towards dance, their dance varsity doesn't count towards the full varsity, which I think completely, they are a massive sport. I've done dance myself. It's a very hard sport, both doing strictly, it's exhausting. So I think dance should be recognised as sports clubs if they want to be, and also their dance varsities should count towards varsity points too.
Are the students' union, and ultimately the students' union should be run for students by students. So I think that if a club wants to be part of the AU and be recognised as a sport within, then yeah, absolutely they should.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go here. Your question?
I'd like to hear the sports candidates' plans to deal with initiations.
I think, like I said, with the fresher cohort and with the publicity stuff, the university, the SU, quite often it's lip service how they deal with it. They do it to make themselves look better or to get out of any problems. So I think that there should be zero tolerance. If a club does an initiation, then they should be banned, at least temporarily. I think it's the culture thing though ultimately, and you get these people who the tradition of it, but it's wrong. People shouldn't be singled out and used to have a laugh, basically.
I would like to improve the training and kind of make it more of a mandatory thing, which I know they say it is, but I think a lot of people slip through the net of doing the committee training every year. And the socials one is outdated. I've done it for the last 2 years, and it's not changed a bit. And I think it needs to, like not significantly at least, and I think it needs to be updated to kind of, you know, include what we see more commonly now, and especially because when there's a massive spotlight on initiations, things are going to go underground, and they're going to get worse if anything. But part of my new reporting system that I would implement would be to kind of just specifically for the sports clubs, and so they can come to me and feel more at ease to report whether that's harassment or initiations and things like that, and then they can be dealt with, because there should be a zero tolerance. They're not designed for team building, they're designed for humiliation and to just kind of have a kick at freshers, which isn't great. I don't agree with it.
So similarly what I said with the report and support, as well as having somewhere to report sexual harassment, which does still happen in male-dominated sports that still having these initiations, but also having a breaking of the taboo around initiations and allowing them to have a way to report, similarly with parents that reported the cricket incident, having a way to report that you don't have to go through student futures, etc., blah, 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 to report what's happening. Similarly, breaking the culture, and also I think freshers and committee, they will need to have not a contract, but something that binds them when they're joining a sports club that sort of lays out these are your expectations. So I don't think anything's said to freshers when they join. And like Lloyd said, if we break it at the start, then hopefully it won't follow on in future years.
Okay, we'll do 2 more questions, hopefully maybe some directed at some other roles besides sports, but don't mind.
So this is more towards just communities. But Noni, you mentioned about getting postgrads more involved. How specifically would you do that? Because I think one big issue with getting postgrads involved is they either end up in their own communities within their departments, so they don't actually get involved with societies and don't have time to specifically get involved in society. So if that is one of your key goals, how will you achieve it? And then any other person running for that goal can also answer.
Hi, yeah. So I think one thing to achieve that goal is to work within the tier system and to make it so societies, the onus is put on societies to help recruit postgrads. Like I said, a lot of postgrads sometimes are very busy, but societies can work around those postgraduate schedules in order to put on events that might be more accessible to them, that might have given them more time. And I think really honing in on making sure that the tier system is a system that makes sure that if societies want to get up to gold, they're going to have to do more for mature students, they're going to have to do more for postgraduates, and they're going to have to push into one of those activities for themselves to do, so that they can actually get towards that tier. I think the tier system should be there as a way of blockading societies that don't necessarily want to interact with mature students and postgraduates, and I think that's how you incentivize societies to actually get it done.
So I actually have to be a postgraduate this year. So I was an undergrad here at Cardiff. So one of the things that I think you do is you can actually create a sort of pathway, so to speak, between undergrads and postgrads through events. I do think that undergrads want to talk to postgrads and postgrads to undergrads as well. But what currently doesn't exist is the space to do that. So I think I want to create that space. I want to work with whoever will be the next postgrad to do that. And then on top of that, I think creating space for PGs to actually have their own space as well. I think that's important. I do think that's important. So I probably want to work with people to create a PGR society or a PG society as a whole, and see how we can actively do that and support that as well. But I think
that's one way that through creating spaces, that's how you get different people to interact with each other, just generally as a whole. And I think that makes sense to underground as well.
I completely agree with you, Nodi. I think you make a really strong point, and you too, Sahib. I think that I also, with my manifesto, really want to work heavily with the tiering system to make sure that it fully integrates everyone within the university and takes into account, again, like struggles, like with being a postgraduate student, we might not have as much time, but still we all need to socialise coming to uni, especially when with the workload of postgraduate it gets so much, and it's so important to be able to have a space to be able to take up your hobbies and be with one with your community. And I think one of the best ways to do that is have postgraduate reps if possible for every society, but to also host a lot more events within a postgraduate teaching centre as well, and hold events that are more accessible in places where postgraduates can pop in if they have like a lunch break in between their lectures or in between the seminars or their research projects, and be able to just at least sit down and talk to different people, figure out what's going on with the rest of the uni, figure out what's going on within a society, and feel properly integrated. Because I'm in my final year, I'm looking to do a master's, and I heavily, I enjoy socialising. Coming to uni is a great place to be able to talk to different people from your own community, from different communities, and feel like you're learning more about people as well. And I feel like if we don't make the space for postgraduates to feel like they're able to do that, then personally, what's the point? They're such a big part of our student body. So I 100% agree, and I think it's a really good incentive, Nodi.
We'll take one more question. Does anyone have a final question? Oscar over there, James. Oh, we're right in front of you. I'm sorry, Oscar. We're going to go with that for James' leg.
Hey, one thing that we hear all the time in Time to Act is that is basically problems with the university's reporting system. The university reporting system for misconduct and abuse is complicated, and the university only sporadically informs the SU of people who have been involved in misconduct or abuse. So, a question for all candidates here. Would you be in favour of the creation of an SU-specific reporting system for misconduct and abuse? It would be great if you could answer with, because there's so many of you, perhaps a yes, no, or a maybe.
Okay, well, we can do that. Is there also anyone who would like to predominantly speak on that? We'll go for the yes and no. If you want to say the extra.
I'm really happy to contribute to that. Thank you, Ben, for your question. I think that with POC communities and the black community especially, the SU doesn't take into consideration their report scheme as well how difficult it is to go and report what has happened to you to justice systems that can continuously fail you and have historically failed you. And I think, again, if we focus on such a narrow set of vulnerabilities, we will, essentially the SU will force marginalised communities to fall between the cracks. So I think there needs to be a really good evaluation of the reporting system, and my answer is yes, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what you just said. I think the training and stuff all around that already exists. It needs to be updated, it needs to be expanded, and it needs to take into account more cultures, more, identities and stuff like that. I would completely be in support of that. I've been, as a part of a committee, I've been at the mercy of the reporting system, and it's just not great. I don't think committees know how to use it, or where to find support around it, and I think it really needs to be more clear, and it needs to be better.
So for this question, yes, obviously I support that idea, but also I'm afraid it's gonna that's my fear basically. It's gonna turn into another reporting system in one of the unis, and the thing is that's the only fear, for anybody who's survived sexual harassment, for example, and also as Meral said, it has to be involved in also context, other contexts, with professors, for example, no matter how high position they have, you know. And also it has to be also motivating, if that makes sense, because some people are not comfortable speaking about this in English, for example, and then could be more expressive in their own language, if that makes sense. And yes, that's my idea.
I think me personally, ultimately, I would agree with everything that's already been said. As a survivor myself, I do think it is difficult to come forward, especially with things in context or depends on the scenario and everything like that. And I think there should be systems in place, so I would agree. I think they definitely need to be heavily updated.
I think just to hear how many people have said that they're a survivor and talk about just a little bit about their story just proves how much we need a much clearer system of reporting and how important it is that we make sure that our SU is a safe place that you feel like you can report, no matter where on campus it happens to you, even if it's off campus but during your university degree. I think that you should still be able to go to your SU for support and safety. And I 100% agree with your point as well. I think that especially if we're trying to make this a clear and inclusive reporting system, being able to report in the language that you feel comfortable in, where you can express what happened to you in the best way possible, I think that's possibly one of the best ideas to go forward with.
Sorry to kind of cut your good question short. Just in the interest of time, we'll cut it there for this. Also, you're all welcome to come sit down, and any follow-up questions, or if you'd like any further clarification, please ask them at the end of the event. But for now, I just want to say thanks for all of you guys coming to the front and move on to presidential candidates. Sorry, the beautiful graphic you did see was on the screen, but I can't figure out how to freeze the screen and get onto the information, so I'll have to deal without that. These are all these are the presidential candidates who've come to the event. I'm not going to say anything else about that.
We did try.
We did. In a similar vein as to how we did the VP and officers, you're going to hear a 2-minute speech from each of these. I'm going to have 2 minutes to talk briefly about an introduction to them in case you haven't had a chance to read their manifestos, see any of their campaign material, etc., etc. Then from there, give you a bit of an idea how we run this. We're going to have 10 questions that are being submitted from you guys on the Google form ahead of the event. Those questions will then come to the candidates, and from there, if any of you want to clarify what someone said on that question, please feel free to raise your hand. I will come to you during that question, and then after we get through those questions, it'll be open to the floor for just broader general questions. Is everyone okay? Okay, so you for this one. Sorry, you're going first.
That's the reason I sat in that chair.
Okay, fair enough. You want to go first.
Hello everybody, my name is Maria and I am currently your Student Union President. But before I was Student Union President, I was the President of the Society, I was the Sports Club Committee member, and I was Chair of Student Senate and Student AGM. So I've been involved in Student Union my entire time that I've been at Cardiff. In a year as your Student Union President, I have achieved securing mandatory consent and bystander training for all incoming students starting the next academic year. The first long-awaited survey of ethical careers and the companies that are brought in to our careers fairs on campus. I've stood up for student protesters, both in public and behind the scenes, and facilitated the first protest to be held on the university campus since the university's injunction on protest. I led the student union to issue an apology to survivors of sexual violence, and I've helped students advocate for themselves against bad landlords. I'm rerunning because, frankly, I don't think that I've achieved everything that I could do in just a year. There's so much more that I think there is to be done. I want to make sure that all student timetables are not only on time but take into account what it's like to be a student, including students with accessibility needs, neurodivergent students, and all of the students who are having to work part-time alongside their studies. I want there to be a student-led review of student cases so that perpetrators aren't put in the same room as their abusers, and that student protesters aren't being put through these systems just for standing up for what's right. I want to protect student workers and student jobs and make sure that students who are in part-time work are able to advocate for themselves against bad bosses. I want to promote consent education during freshers and in the lead-up to freshers, not just throughout the year and ensure that students are able to have safe night outs through harm reduction and anti-spiking measures. I want to promote ethical and sustainable careers. I want a karaoke night for TAF. But you know, fun ones just to tag on the end there. But I've already had a year's experience as your president. I won't need any training over the summer. I can get straight to work. I can get stuff in place from September, and I'm not afraid to be political or honest with students. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Colin Thompson, and I didn't know that I was going to be doing it in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I realised.
So we'll go with it anyway. So I'm standing on 3 main points: diversity, inclusion, and then mental health as well. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I think they are the 3 main topics which stop students actually showing up as the self that they want in the classroom and in the social setting as well, and then also enjoying Cardiff in the time here. So really, they're the 3 areas that I really want to empower, and that's not just letting people be able to show up in the room, it's actually letting them be themselves in the room as well. So I think a lot of the points that everyone else has been making tonight is, are really, really good points, and definitely areas that need to be looked into. So what I'm kind of doing is I'm standing as somebody who's got a lot of experience in the university. So I've been here as an active student for 8 years. I did my degree here, my master's. I did a year in industry as well. I had 2 years out where I was actually a carer for my dad and did some work as well. And I still tapped into the university. I did some running with Team Cardiff and came to some online lectures and was kind of involved in that alumni community. And then I come back and now in the 4th year of my PhD. And I've also taught across about 6 modules. I've been a student mental welfare officer, active bystander, actually I've been active bystander trained and I've also been active bystander in situations as well. So that has been something which I really think is important if you're in a position where you can, is to speak up on issues. I think the reason why I'm here today is because I've seen some issues, I've experienced some issues, seen issues with people around us, and I've raised it up the levels and haven't seen things happen quickly enough. So I started student rep, then I was on the CSEC committee for the physical science and education, engineering, sorry, and now I'm here to stand for student president. So I hope to have some really constructive discussion today, and I'm really looking forward to the questions. So thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Alex. Those of you who know me well enough will know I probably don't need the microphone, but we're going to use it anyway. Before I tell you about me, I'd like to talk about you, and you specifically at the moment as a student media. Thank you very much for hosting this event. We know it wasn't easy. The next you is a you that includes me, and that's students. This is a students' union, and as a second year, I will take a sabbatical year to be your SU president. Hopefully, if you know me, please vote. And essentially, that means that any decisions that I make, any change I make, will affect me. It will affect those closest to me, and it will mean that the accountability will be there, directly staring me in the face when I go home and make dinner, and Maya tells me I'm taking too long to cook. My 3 main priorities, there's about 15, please read the manifesto if you're having a bad evening. Start with safe zones. This is directly piggybacking off Exeter University, who already operate a system where you have a zone marked out with green paint on the floor, and it has full CCTV coverage, so if you're walking home and you're feeling unsafe, you have somewhere to go, which you can then use an app to contact support services, including our security, who are great at checking IDs, apparently. Secondly, housing is a big priority. I love the work that the staff have done this year, but I don't think it's enough. I think everyone's still turning to Facebook to get help, which isn't great, although we do love the overheard beef. I would love to introduce a ranking system which would take the experiences of bachelor students and apply it. So many of you, especially I know the freshers are here from MUN, I told you which other companies do not go with, allegedly. essentially would build on that and make that a centralised system so everyone knows, and then advocating, as you will have seen, about boycott. I'm not afraid to step on toes. In fact, I'm sometimes too good at it, but I think that'll really benefit this. Thank you.
Thank you. Shalom everyone, I'm Joshua Tandy, I'm your current VP Heath Park, going on to your next SU President. Over the past year, I've led campaigns, represented students in senior meetings, and I'm on track to deliver all of my manifesto commitments that I made last year in full, and all of that is on the SU website for you to view. Because leadership isn't about making promises, it is about keeping them, and I am here to prove that I do that. They don't ask me, they don't ask you to simply believe me when I say that I do. I've received 2 notices of excellence from the accountability panels, which you make up as students. I have the backing of all 5 vice presidents of the Students' Union currently, and they believe that I represent the demographics they represent best as your hopefully future SU president. Before this role though, I was a student. I studied BSc Biomedical Anatomy, and I was a student rep. I was president of show choir, along with many other student groups as well in the SU and the university, such as student mentors. I've worked closely with students and staff to resolve many issues, lead teams, and turn the feedback that we get into proper, accountable action. I bring accountability, approachability, and proven delivery to this role, and I want to take the success I've had at Heath Park campus and deliver it for every student here on both campuses. If elected, my priorities are clear. Firstly, student protection and safety. Zero tolerance to sexual violence, visible and accountable action for the SU, and pushing for a student protection bill so that students are protected in housing, cost of living, and mental health policy. Secondly, cost of living and well-being. Expanding hardship funding, affordable food, transport, and accommodation support, and cutting mental health waiting times whilst also strengthening the service. Thirdly, a student-led university experience, upgrading the study and campus facilities, embedding student voice centrally in university decisions, and standing firmly against the cuts to teaching and support that harms your experience. At the heart of this campaign is one principle, that this is your students' union. You deserve to know exactly what's happening and have a real opportunity to shape it. If you want to read my full manifesto, it's on the Tandy for President on Instagram. Thank you very much, and I look forward to it.
So hopefully, if you weren't already aware of the candidates here, you do now know a little bit about them, you do now know a little bit about their priorities. Originally, going into these questions, the newspaper was going to write some kind of probing questions, but thankfully, because so many of you submitted your own questions, we haven't needed to do that at all. So every question coming from here has been an anonymous submission from a student, which is great to start with. So to get it going, the first question stated, given the ongoing struggle at the university's campaign of cuts, we need our Students' Union president to fight tooth and nail for us. I asked the candidates what their plans are for taking on the university management and stopping their extreme cost-cutting measures, particularly as salaries for university's top earners have seemed to only increase.
I'm happy to start. I'm going to preface this by saying that my parents are both academics whose jobs are currently at risk at Swansea University, and seeing the stress that has brought to my family, I already empathise with lecturers who have been at risk at losing their jobs. But now me and my dad is threatening to take early retirement so that my mum gets to keep her job and stuff like that. This is a deeply personal issue to me. And it's something that, sadly academic futures was passed before the year started for me, so I was never able to walk them back on that, but this is something that I have been in countless meetings with senior management in the university speaking up against. I meet regularly with trade unions to ensure that we are able to express solidarity with each other and be a united front on this issue. I'm not afraid to stand up for university management on this. It's a very deeply personal issue for me. I think that we should be able to study all subjects at a university that we want to.
So I have pretty much the same sentiment. I want there to be all of the range of subjects over time, as well as being a disparity in how much money different subjects bring in. But I don't think that actually takes away from the value that they create. So I want just be monetary value, actual value for society as well. And I think that's something that should be talked about. I think obviously the university goal is very important for Wales. So this problem with the cuts and stuff is very much an internal problem in the university against management, but also externally for sort of Welsh government as well. So I think that I would like to sort of look on that side of things as well and make sure that actually the university is almost forced to make sure that the wide range of subjects are there to stay, as well as fighting internally. But also, another point which isn't often talked about with the cuts is the fact that, you know, we are struggling for money. But one of the areas that I really want to focus on is getting contracts signed on time for the university to have income. I mean, at the minute, the sort of legal requirements and everything that goes back and forwards with companies that are trying to work with the university causes a lot of barriers there. I personally work in electrical engineering, and sort of South Wales has been kind of put across as sort of, you know, the powerhouse for AI and for power electronics. And it's the hope of bringing in a lot of high-value wages in this area. So, you know, like, it's really important that universities can actually work with local companies effectively to make sure that money is flowing into the university, so we don't have to make cuts and we can actually grow as an institution. Thank you.
Firstly, to thank everyone for your amazing engagement, to have all the questions, so Ruaidhrí didn't have to make them up. This is a students' union, and a union should fight, or it's just a glorified pressure group. I'm not a fan of them. I think in terms of cost-cutting, that is the root issue of so many of the things that we spoke about today already. Timetabling, Wendy Lana copy tasking from New Zealand, allegedly. And centralised timetabling to cut costs so that they have less staff in buildings. All of these kind of things are something that we should be fighting. Every little bit of resistance is something that tells them that maybe they're crossing the line a little bit, or usually a lot. Yeah, essentially I think fight.
I think that obviously as a union, we obviously have the staff unions around the UCU. We need to work with them because staff and student solidarity is really, really important. We also need to recognise that it's obviously affecting our lecturers, but also we have the PS, the professional services staff proposal as well, that's now affecting pretty much every staff member in the entire university, and that affects every service. I think we need to make sure that we are strong on things like protest guidance so that we can actually put those on, because at the moment we can't, you know, if you wanted to go out and protest for your lecturers in solidarity with them, you can't do that as a union. We should be able to do that and support them, and they support us, and we work together. The mismanagement within the university of you know, the funds is actually really crucial, and as a union we should be really critical of that. We have to take, you know, we should be taking a really good look at where all of that is going and what's actually going wrong. You know, we have an amazing finance department within the SU. We can utilise them and their skills to help us look at the university and, you know, effectively plug the holes for them, because unfortunately that is something that we do regularly. We help them and we do plug a lot of different issues, and we should be doing it for this as well. Nothing is too big for our union if we stand together, and we need to be doing that for the university to show them that there are other ways to do things other than just firing people off the cuff. And finally as well, I just want to raise awareness that the amount of staff outside of the, out of the university off ill is really high due to the mental pressures, mental health of those, and that's costing the university a lot of money. And I think we need to also be looking at that and what that does again to the students and the impact that that has. I think that's a really important thing to think about. Thank you.
So yeah, did anyone have anything they wanted to clarify about any specific person's statements, anything like that? If not, we can move on. James? I'll come up with the microphone to you.
The microphone reversed.
Yeah.
So this is a question for the two current staff officers. What actions have you taken to resist the ban on protests on the university estate? What have you said to the university in your time, in your role?
So glad you asked this. This has been like a really big piece of work that I've been doing this year. I've been lobbying really, really hard for the university to actually release protest guidance. they told me it was going to be ready for freshers. Apparently it's on the COO's desk, and she's not signed it because she's been too busy being out of the country. But this is something that I've been literally since like week 2 making sure that if students wanted to wear keffiyehs at their graduation, that they were able to. I made sure that I had a line with the security at the event so students were able to do that if they wanted to. I wore one at my own graduation to make sure that students actually could, to make sure that they weren't just lying to me about it. I've been, every meeting with senior management where protests has come up, I've told them my stance on this. I've been really hardly lobbying. I've been meeting with the university's compliance team on right to protest, and then I also helped facilitate Reclaim the Night. That was held on campus. I helped them through all the paperwork, because at the moment, in order to hold a protest on campus, you have to do risk assessments. I know that their organisers had to literally put their own university careers on the line for that event, because if somebody misbehaved, they could have gotten in trouble for it. Protests shouldn't have to be run like that, but up until the point where the injunction expires, hopefully, I think it's at the end of this year, then I will ensure that every student that wants to hold a protest, I will help them through that process. Thank you.
I just want to obviously emanate that it's been really lovely to work in a team on all of those things this year, but also for the campus that I look after, the Heath Park campus. I haven't actually necessarily needed to use it, but it was something that popped into my mind. Obviously, what is the Cardiff Uni Trust Board view of protest? Because obviously it's a campus, but it's also obviously hospital. So I've been communicating with some members that are basically kind of both part of the trust and the university around that guidance. I have it on my laptop where if it needs to come out, and I managed to secure that in term 1. I haven't had any groups approach me or anybody tell me that there was a need for that to come out for any protest. But if there are any people who would like to use the Heath Park campus protest, I'm again more than happy to help you through that, and also navigate not only the university protest regulations, but also the trust board as well, because obviously they have their own set. So that was an added complication.
Are there any final questions before we move on to the next one? Okay, there were lots of questions around the topic of sexual violence. It's obviously very, very topical at the minute. And obviously we've got quite a long live presence from time to time tonight. The simplest way to put this question was, given the amount of candidates who spoke about the need to tackle sexual violence, what are your material plans to actually tackle sexual violence on campus? And there were some others speaking specifically around the freshers period. So maybe
I'll go first again. In terms of tangible things, I think we should first look at the tangible stuff that I've already been able to achieve this year, namely getting the commitment from the university that they're going to introduce mandatory consent and bystander training for all students from next year, and then also the apology from the Students' Union to victims of sexual violence. I've also done a lot of work with Time to Act, facilitating meetings between them and our venues team to ensure that there is the correct safety protocols in place. That's really the correct safety protocols.
I'm sorry, I'm done.
That's not personal, that one.
I'm trying to get you framed.
The correct safety protocols are in place in nightclubs and our SE venues. Something that I've already started the work on this year, started conversations with senior management with, that I'd really like to get done, particularly if I have a second term, is I'd really love there to be a student-led review of student cases. I sat on a case in the summer and what I saw was not acceptable, frankly, and I think that currently our student conduct procedures are in a place where they're too harsh on protesters and not harsh enough on rapists. But it needs to be done in the right way. It needs to be student-led, questions guided by students. This is something that the university said that they're open to. It's just everything in the university moves so slowly, particularly when you get to a kind of compliance level like this. So that's something I'd be really, really keen to see. In terms of stuff for freshers, again, I mentioned I'm not going to have to do nearly as much induction this year than I did last year if I'm going straight into another year of the role. So I'm going to have the entire summer as a run-up to make sure that we get freshers right. And getting freshers right involves having Let's Talk consent campaigns from the start, having consent stalls at freshers' fairs, consent screens at the nightclub events, but also creating a safer night outs guide. This is something that the University of York have done recently this year, but I kind of want to emulate, making sure that all the resources are in the same place, that they're easily accessible, doing a lot of stuff on harm reduction, which is having, do I need to explain? It's like not having an explicitly anti-stance on drugs, so the students who do take drugs in their venues can do it in a safe way. A lot of anti-spiking stuff as well. I've also recently been meeting with colleagues in other universities to look at an accreditation system for our sports clubs and societies. Obviously, I'm not an activity sabbatical officer, so I would be very much in a kind of facilitation, helping role in this, but I've had some really, really useful conversations with the University of Leeds about how they run their committee, consent and bystander training, which is all peer-led, but not run by volunteers. They pay students to get trained to be able to deliver this training in small groups so that societies can gain these badges to prove that they're doing this right. So much work to do. Obviously, I'm always willing to be guided on this, but I hope that gives you a bit of a taste of what I've done and what I'm hoping to do.
Just by the way, before we move on, just to let everyone know, because of the delay we did have today, we do have the room till 6, so we will be running over with what's going on. Don't feel like you have to stay, but obviously, please feel free to stay. But just to let you know, we will be running over on the 5 o'clock deadline. I'm not sure exactly by how much yet.
Yeah, so this is an area which I do feel very, very strongly about. Over my time in university, I've experienced a lot of different things, and I think the two things that I would personally like to do myself, as well as listening to what the other candidates have put forward, what the Vice President's put forward, and also students over this year, but also trying to put it on the ground, is that I would actually try to have a very pragmatic approach. What I would be doing is I'd be getting all the options that we'll have, that we can do, and I would be seeing how much they cost, and I'd be really seeing which ones are going to have the most value, and I'd be really trying to see what we can kind of do there. If there's any low-hanging fruits that I can just do very quickly, they would just be pushed through very quickly. This is a bit of a trigger for me, to be honest, something that I've been going through recently. And I'm not going to talk about that now, but I have talked about it with the newspaper and my podcast. So that's been the space for me to talk about this topic. But I think if I was elected, my approach would be very pragmatic, and I would be trying to weigh the sort of cost against benefit, and anything that I can just do without kind of going through that process. I would just kind of get pushed through on the ground. Yeah, so that's
Firstly, thank you to the anonymous but definitely time to act question. It's amazing that you've got such a big presence here, and thank you so much for being with me and talking about all the kind of things we agree on. With Safe Zones, obviously I outlined it as my first principle. This would be in 4 phases, which would help us achieve things earlier. In terms of freshers, we know it's such a dangerous time. We know obviously there's a lot of accommodations, but a lot of the accommodations are on kind of a route basically from town. So you go Circuit, and then you basically have uni buildings, then to St Gallen, Collinpool, Aberconway, and then up to Tally. So you could actually feasibly do this. Other universities have it in place. There is such a great precedent for it. In terms of cases, it was really interesting talking to Time Track about this, and us talking about the fact that the standard of the university cases system is actually below that of the courts in our judicial system, which I think everyone in the room can agree is just abhorrent. This is an institution of further education which is acting like it's in the 70s. We really need to call out everything, and I think the biggest part is trusting the voices. We have such a good presence from Time to Act. We need to engage with Time to Act, and we need Time to Act to know that we're there to support them and to get their meetings with Wendy Lana and all the other people who are ducking them. In terms of training, I think the preventative stuff is really important. I know Lola mentioned, we're talking about the committee training earlier, that there's such a thing that people should not go to training and not facing any repercussions. This is unacceptable. It's something mandatory. Excuse the French, it's fucking mandatory. In terms of internally, I know Laura and Paul have introduced a thing. Maria, I promise I'll hurry up. I know Laura and Paul have introduced consent training. However, again, they've only introduced it to freshers. This is something we were working on as soon as that panel and telling them it's not good enough. You're saying you're doing something and you're bringing in these things, but actually bringing them properly. Thank you.
It's been, you know, a pleasure to go through the year, and I'm about to launch my consultation on sexual violence on placement after elections. That will feed directly into a letter that I'm about to write to our Health Minister of Wales. But I would really like the opportunity to expand on my work for sexual violence, and that's obviously why I'm running for SU President. I want to say my plans for the year on tackling sexual violence. It would be to deliver every Time to Act commitment in full with public progress updates. I think the apology was great and the commitments we gave are great, but I don't think we put out sufficient comms since then about what we've actually done. I think the year-round tackling sexual violence campaign is really important, which should include Let's Talk Consent. That's building upon that and making sure that it's actually year-round, because sexual violence doesn't just happen at freshers and refreshers. I think that we need the current working group on sexual violence, but we need not for that just to meet with the sabbatical officers to then go away. We need them to actually meet with the higher up university officials. So I would make sure that that is arranged with Wendy and the other kind of University Executive Board members, so that it's the SAVs, the Survivor Informed panel, and the members themselves. Also, I would really like to strengthen and enforce the current sexual harassment policies, because I don't believe they're being followed, nor really are up to scratch. And also, I would also lobby for stronger protection at a governmental level. As I said, it's really hard, for instance, I'm just going to use placement students as an example. It's really difficult. If something happens on placement, they are told to go sometimes to the university, but then there's 2 forms, sometimes to the police, and so on and so forth. And it's really, really difficult to actually do that. So we need to be working wider than ourselves as well for support nationally.
If anyone has any follow-up questions on the topic, we do. James, if you have the microphone, could you shuffle on over? Just in the middle of the break.
Hello, thank you all for your answers. I heard Alex really mention circuit, and it did make me think about the fact that sexual violence obviously is not exclusive to our student union, and you talk a lot about resources, and I would like to know if any of you have any concrete plans to spread out these resources to clubs across Cardiff to protect students.
Maybe start with Alex.
Thank you very much for the question. Also for James running across, it's a good job he's not running for AUVP, isn't it? In terms of, you mentioned circuit, I know in the experience of some of my friends and myself, Misfits has been more supportive than the SU security, which is unacceptable. So obviously, I think, we need to start here and build it out. As part of the phases, if you read my manifesto, it also goes, and I think it's in the 3rd or the 4th phase, focus on local businesses. If you think about it, CUTV and Heath, a lot of the area are funded by us going in and buying 3 coffees and having a cry. So essentially, if they're willing to work with us, which they should be, because we're propping them up, then we could get to a really good situation where actually Cardiff as a community is a safe place. I think we also need to work with the other universities, because this is not a problem that's exclusively facing us, it's a problem that's facing everyone, and it's a problem that we need everyone to beat.
we really do need to expand our policies onto. I think that's been really disappointing this year that the council has ended their student nightlife safety meeting, and I think that re-establishing something along those lines and making sure that student safety is a community-based thing as well, I think is really vital. That being said, I do think there's a lot of work to do to make sure that our venue is the gold standard on this. I think that we're uniquely positioned as a students' union who runs such a large nightclub to make sure that all of these safety initiatives are survivor-led and making venues as safe as possible for students, and that's something I'd really like to see continue. Obviously this year we've had a meeting between Time to Act and our women's officer and our venues team. Obviously that's a start. I think there's a lot more work that we can do because we need to be the best in Cardiff when it comes to this. Thank you.
So I would say I don't have any concrete plans at all, but there will be plans, they'll be bomb-proof when they're implemented, and they'll not be a token.
I think for societies and communities, we already have an amazing network of groups, of student groups, they're called societies and clubs. We need to make sure that we're actually training these to kind of foster good environments. I hear too often training's too expensive, we can't afford that, or it won't work, or what's really mandatory mean. We need to actually make it a priority and move funding to ensure that we are getting training that is clear, concrete, and is truly mandatory. And I don't care whether that's the union that supplies that, or the university, or if we have to rally at a higher level to get funding from at national level, whether that's NEDA, which is kind of our university higher regular body. We need to make sure that that is a priority because we have safe student groups already. We need to expand that and make them more concrete and safer than they already are, which some of them are not, and we need to make sure that those are up to scratch.
So I'll move on to the next motion. I promise this was not written by the newspaper, but Tandy discussed in an interview to Gair Rhydd that student media should be delicate about what they're writing as they're funded by the SU and should be careful with conflict. How do other candidates feel about this? Should student media avoid conflict with the SU, even if it's to hold our elected officers to account as they're funded by the SU? And further to this, do candidates support an independent student media?
So it's not really something that I've put so much thought in before about the independent student union. But for me, it's very important that students have a voice. Personally, I think if the student union isn't going to be part of that voice, students will have a voice anyway. And I think that is detrimental to the well-being and sort of the needs of our students. So I personally think that there should be sort of free speech, and if the student union is wanting to infringe on students having a voice, I think that is a big concern.
Something I said in my own interview, which I'll quote in a really weird way, is that the biggest weapon of the SU against injustice is the student media. And I think that's something I stand by. My commitment to the student media is pretty there, boycott. In terms of that, I think because it's such an important tool, we shouldn't leave our best weapon at home, and we shouldn't leave our best weapon ring-fenced by bylaws that are ineffective and irregularly updated. We need a system that works and a system that consults people, and until then, we are complicit in the injustice because we're not allowing our own student media to fight it, which is, again, in French, fucking unacceptable.
I just want to kind of echo the last point that the bylaws are outdated. They are. We need to be reviewing these, and I think that the first thing that I would do, one of the first things, assuming that people are there in the summer, is march on over and organise that meeting, and let's start to update those and actually make sure that you can use your voice, because this is really, really important. I'd also like to foster collaboration between the union and student media. I feel as though we can work together, and that we need to be accepting that you can be critical and we can also be friends. I mean, we have critical friend reviews for courses when they get put through revalidation. It's the same thing for unions. It should be almost like an accountability process, and is that not the whole part of a union, to constantly critique ourselves on the work that we're doing? So we need to expand upon that, and I think student media plays a really important part in that, and we need to strengthen that.
I'm going to echo what I said in my interview with Gair Rhydd the other week, which was one of my goals coming into this year was to make student media dramatic again. I've had previous sabbatical officers tell me about times when Gair Rhydd journalists used to chase them down the corridors. And I've been very clear, particularly with James this year, that if he ever wants to chase me down the corridors, then I'm completely open to that. I've really loved all of the work that I've been doing with student media this year, whether that be taking part in Express Radio's 24-hour fundraiser, featuring in a CUTV documentary on that featured my housing campaign, or being interviewed with Gair Rhydd, by Gair Rhydd at the start of the year, and also, handing them a couple of places that they should FOI on occasion. That doesn't leave this room. I think that hasn't always put me in the most comfortable of positions, but I don't care. I want people to be able to criticise us. I want people to be able to criticise me. How do I know if I'm able to do a better job if I'm not being held to account? I'm, very pro-student media. I think that I've put my money where my mouth is when it comes to that this year, and I hope that we can continue to keep Gair Rhydd dramatic in coming years.
Well, I sort of said you don't have any questions, but there's one here already. James, you have the microphone still? Right down to the front. Oh, here you go. Where you go? Right there.
I've got big feet.
Said.
This is a question for Tandy. In your interview, you seem to confuse student media with societies. Do you know the difference?
Yeah, I was talking about the societies not being like affiliated in terms of funding. So what I was trying to say is that because they're effectively not affiliated to funding, it means technically they can, be more critical because they don't have those same laws in terms of talking about those bylaws. And I was saying the funding from like the kind of union perspective is like is to do with that issue in terms of the critical nature of student media. I don't think it should be an issue in my opinion, but I'm saying that was the difference. So I'm sorry if it didn't come out well in the interview. Thank you very much.
Is there any other questions? One.
Hi guys, so completely separate to the previous question. So we haven't spoken to one of the candidates yet, but we will be. How many pleasures by Contact and the other candidates, especially who have it as a manifesto point name? And just on a note for all the candidates tonight who have mentioned sexual violence and time to act, we're really grateful for that, but we just want you to know that if you are lucky enough to get this position, we are expecting you to act on it, and we will be chasing it up with you.
To speak to them yet, but they have been on my radar to speak to, and also I'll be going to their event on Sunday night. So I look forward to meeting the committee, but also people that are supporting them, and that'll be an active opportunity for you to actually inform me, and if I do get the position, then I will be listening to their voices, and if I don't, I will still be on the sort of CSEC committees for physical science and engineering or education, but that will be something which I'll hopefully carry forward into that role anyway. So please do come and have a chat, even if you're not going to be supporting me. Thank you very much.
Well, firstly, if I got this role, I would also encourage you to chase me down corridors. Based on what we've seen tonight, you'll be more effective than James. I know that Time to Act have done amazing work with getting a legal requirement and that kind of duty of care from universities using local legal precedent. I think that's an incredible way to fight something that we already have existing, which is also partially why my Green Zones thing, I think, could be really helpful. And then obviously we have your work on apologies. Wendy Lana, stop ducking. She's like a heavyweight boxer at this rate. And then, yeah, I have the other ones. The consent training that I spoke about earlier, which I was advocating for in the student staff panel, which is something that's been really good, that's been introduced, and it's unfortunate that the departments have tried to water it down and dodge things. But Wendy Lana called.
I also just want to say that I think Time to Act are an amazing group, and I also want to make sure that we continue that on. I don't necessarily want you to join the union or anything, because I think that the independence and impartiality is really, really good. But I want to make sure that you have longevity, and I really would like to work on that with you. So that is something that I'd be really committed to. I also generally am off the rules if there's an ongoing issue, but before you leave, if we had a meeting before you leave, that next meeting should be in the book, because it takes 2 minutes, come on. So I think that's also really important, line of discussion. I also think that having the kind of committee that I described, where we're with the university and talking to the university executive board, should also really talk about to the officers. All officers should attend that. I think we've seen with the all of the officers we have obviously our remits, but I think it's really important that we're all kind of taking care of our areas of sexual violence. So I'd really encourage obviously make it so that all of the officers attend, so they can all do work in all their respective areas.
Okay, moving on to the next. No, actually.
I'll be really quick. I'll be really quick. You wanted 4, right? Pledge. All right, I can give you 4. I can give you 2 that I've done, one that I'm working on, and one for the future. Mandatory consent and bystander training for all incoming undergraduates is something that we've achieved a commitment for this year. An apology from the Students' Union to survivors of sexual violence. Like I said earlier, I'm working on the student-led review of student cases, and then I've also been asking Wendy Lana for her apology as well.
Moving on to the next motion. This one states that I'm a med student and I'm worried about what the reforms around the VP Heath position have done. It's removed all incentives to do the work, as it's no longer paid and now requires 2 people for representation rather than just 1. How do the changes that have been made benefit me? I feel like I've lost representation as a medical student.
Let Joshua start this one.
I had a feeling this one's going to come up, so I have prepped. So the decision about the VP Heath part removal is primarily about securing representation, not removing it. A law that came into place is that as of this year, you need to be from the demographic that you are representing. So it means that only Heath Park students can run for VP Heath Park. So that would not obviously be the case for myself. I wouldn't be here sat in if that was in place last year. In fact, there would actually be no one sat here because no one from Heath Park ran last year. And that might be the case again, and that is not a very stable system. In terms of what I've done this year, like the Heath Park Freshers Fair, that solely relied on my leadership. All of the events at Heath Park have been organised through me, and I don't think that representation, relying on just one person, is very good. If I was ill for 3 months, you would have no Heath Park representation, no one to run the Heath Park exec, literally nothing. So talking about what we're doing instead, under the old system, just to kind of clarify, it relied solely on the VP part position. In the new position, it means that students can represent themselves, because it's from student feedback, actually, that they said they want campaign officer positions, because med students, dental students, healthcare students, in general, don't want to take a year out to represent because it interferes with their clinical skills, and that was taken from your guys' feedback as students from the student body. And so the new structures from like the campaign officers, like reserving one Heath Park Executive Committee member for each executive committee, which is currently going through the process of kind of being ratified, is really beneficial to the overall system. And also ensuring that all special officers are responsible for Heath Park, not just one person, and I think that is a much securer way of representing Heath Park.
Firstly, I would disagree with the logic. By the logic of splitting the role, let's just be 4 presidents and all head home, which I don't think is a great way to do it. I think that roles like this need to be paid, so they're open to all students. I personally work with multiple medical students who I know from their life and my life would not be able to support themselves in university and thus would not be able to do this role. They would not have the time. Furthermore, talking about representation, this decision was made at an AGM held in Cathays at 6 p.m. I would encourage anyone who lives with a med student to ask them if they want to go for a pint at 6 p.m. in Cathays, and they'll probably hit you. So, not great. I think the role definitely did need a rework, but I'm not necessarily sure about the method it was brought in, and I'm not sure about the logic behind it.
Well, I think firstly, a big thank you to all of the people at Heath Park, in the roles that they're looking to do in the future, but also just to be mindful that they actually are, all be actually working in these roles during their studies as well, helping people out. There's a lot of pressure. I don't really know too much about why the roles being changed from one paid one to two unpaid one, but obviously there's some sort of cost associated with that. If the debate is based on not cost, then I kind of think, really we could just have both, because we've got one paid, two unpaid, everything's covered. So I don't know why that isn't the case, but for me it would be about going to Heath Park, talking to people, and trying to understand what is the best way to go forward for the year after. But if sort of not having a VP is a big problem, then it would have to be raised and work to get someone in that position, which may need more incentives for that position. If someone isn't setting up, I know med students have very tight sort of timelines on how long they can wait before they apply for jobs and stuff like that. So maybe that is why they're not willing to take that break in their studies, but it'll be interesting to get to the bottom of that and to make sure that they are represented properly and integrated alongside the wider university community.
I think what I'm going to do now is I can shout. I've got a loud voice. I think I'm going to speak to you more about why I think it's so vital that we have a vice president for undergraduate students. I'm sure all of you are aware that the university is going through a lot of academic transformation at the moment, and currently we do not have a member of the team who is able to take ownership of that work and it's spread amongst all of us. That doesn't mean that we haven't been able to do it completely, but I think that when you look at their plans, which include having a module that every undergraduate student has to take at some point during the course of their degree, not having somebody who can take ownership and make sure that that's being executed in the right way, because I'm not sure anybody in this room fully would trust the university to execute that in a way that people don't dislike. I think that having this undergraduate education is really, really crucial. In terms of why campaign officers' roles in general can't be paid, I've always been banging on for ages about how we need to make sure that we compensate students for their work, for their rep work and stuff like that. That's something I've been banging on to the university about for ages, because if you only hear from students who are there on an unpaid capacity, then you're going to miss out on hearing from students who do have to work part-time during their degree. I'm sure probably the majority of people in this room had to work part-time in their degree. I worked all 3 years of my degree. Sadly, due to charity law, if we paid our campaign officers, they'd then only be able to take 1 year paid as a sabbatical officer. That's part of the Education Act. That's why you're only allowed to do 2 terms as a staff. You're only allowed to do 2 paid terms as a officer for a students' union. So that's a conversation that we can have. It's whether our students want to have that option taken off the table to do that role and be compensated for part-time work. But again, we're happy to have that conversation. I just think that it's important that people know that.
So did anyone want to come in on that motion? Any questions about anything? Oh yeah, Olivia. You're just going to have to project your voice now, unfortunately. Oh, I know, but I'm sure you'll do it.
I'm just looking for a bit of clarity on practice job in Korea. You said yourself, Josh, that Heath Park students in the survey said that they didn't want to represent themselves, they didn't want to take a year out of their studies. Can I just ask where this information is from? If it's published anywhere, can I find it anywhere?
This was supplied to me via the student voice team at the Students' Union. I don't know if it's published anywhere, but I mean, I can always ask for it to be released if that's what you would like. Basically, the overall comments were basically about a lot of allied healthcare professionals find it really hard to take time out of their studies because it does affect their clinical skills. A lot of them as well are just very career focused, and props to them for that. Obviously, it doesn't mean they shouldn't have representation and shouldn't go without it, and they should represent themselves, but it shouldn't come as a hindrance to their career. And unfortunately, it is a case where in the general kind of climate of going into healthcare, some employers view having a year out like that negatively, which is a large discussion. But that was the reasoning behind it.
If you just put it in percentage for me, like the results you got from the student voice group.
Student voice department supplied me the comments and information from the students in general. They collected through things like Speaking Week and so on and so forth.
So it wasn't a group of Heath Park students?
Yeah, these comments were from Heath Park students, correct.
Or you don't have to?
I don't think I have much else to add other than, our medical students and nursing students are really busy training to be the next generation of healthcare workers, and a lot of that means that taking a year out of their studies or taking a gap year is not possible for them. We want Heath Park students to be able to represent themselves. I think if you look at the past 5 years, we've only had, I think it's 1 Heath Park student run for the Heath Park role, and I think then we have to kind of have these difficult conversations of what actually is going to work best for Heath Park students. And we don't want to, take away representation for everybody. If everyone could have a SAB, I'd love that. But that was a, conversation in the student union, conversation at AGM. The arguments that I said again about the VP undergraduate role and making sure that, caring about the Heath as part of everybody's role, I think is really important. But I get that it's not a comfortable change, and it's always difficult with these officer roles. I know people felt similar when undergraduate was initially replaced with international, or when welfare was replaced with Welsh. It's always really tricky with this sort of thing.
Thank you so much.
I just...
Sorry.
I just wanted to add, just like in my thoughts while we've been having this sort of discussion, that obviously there is a reluctance for students to come forward and do that in Park, and I do think that the future of healthcare and the sort of quick developments that will happen in sort of med tech is really important. It would be great to have their input across universities, so we can have more like cross-discipline endeavours and have them more integrated in social events for sure. But I just want to say that I know that medical students have representing the medical area at the universities and student union to actually get some sort of points towards their careers in that area. I don't know how that exactly works, it's not my area, but you know, the sort of sentiment behind that would definitely be there.
Yeah, question at the top.
Can you hear me okay?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, you're going to have to really shout from there.
I'll shout it a bit louder. So just adding on to conversations you've been having about working with reps, working with other officers. I've been staff for 2 years and I know how important it is to work, you know, with a range of people and to really do your best to champion the student voice, which is what you're all discussing there. Obviously there's been a few comments tonight about rubbing people up the wrong way and being brash. That's definitely one way to do the job, but it's often not the most successful in making wins for students. So my question is, how do you plan to work and build relationships with others across the university as well as those within your own team going forward?
So I think for me, you know, from university is a lot about the experience you have and the interactions that you have, you know, with different stakeholders in your education and within the university. And you know, I think it's unpleasant for everyone to have this sort of negative approach to things, and to have that positive approach. You know, there needs to be discussion. We need to adjust and understand each other. So for me, it is just about conversation and trying to ease them tensions. For me, I'll not be you know, outright attacking people, but I will be strong in my position on subjects. But I will keep, as much as I can, I will keep that conversation going, but it will be very transparent, so students know what's going on, what's being said, and you know, can scrutinise that openly. And I will be supporting them to have the voice, because that voice is what will be choosing the direction that I'm pushing in. So, thank you.
Firstly, yeah, in terms of quite an aggressive approach to things, I feel a vague strength. However, it will persist. The current system and the status quo that we've had means that when all of you go to your lectures on Monday, unless you're a stab or whatever, if you go in and you ask the person next to you, do we have a students' union president? Do we have sabbatical officers? Can you name one? I'd really be interested to see what the answers you get from that, because we had record engagement last year with 8,000 people voting in this election. There's 30,000 people at this university. Clearly, the way that we've been doing it isn't working. I do believe in compromise, and I do believe in working together. I believe in a kind of triangulation of actually all of the perspectives coming together to build a compromise, and that's what we should do. But as I said in my interview with the paper, I think this idea of preserving political capital with the SU in the doghouse and worrying about the rain is getting embarrassing, and we need to stand up to students.
I think the relationship with the university is obviously important. Obviously, personally, good ties already, you know, being a current staff. I think the main way that I've been managing to, you know, enact the change that we want to see, you know, as per my, you know, elected manifesto this year, is, sounds a bit cold, but it's evidence. You know, for instance, I'm going to take an example here. Societies and communities, this is something I'd like to do. Societies, communities, and clubs. We want, ideally, I'd love to give them more funding so we can lower the fees going into them, and basically making sure that there's more access. The way to do that is because, you know, there's evidence already out there that proves, you know, if you're in a society or you're in a club, it actually improves your mental health. We need to show, you know, from Cardiff University this is also the case, and promote that to university staff. That's just an example, but that is how we get people, and the university rather, to work with us on the things that we want. And, you know, I think it's fostering a good collaborative environment.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that there really is a balance to be struck when it comes to being strong, but also being pragmatic. While I'd love to go into every meeting with the university all guns blazing and tell them everything that I think they're doing wrong, I also do recognise that the university is responsible for our block grant, and at a time where the university is trying to make cuts, trying to get it increased or kept the same, if we're being increasingly more publicly challenging, it's going to be really difficult. And that block grant does fund hundreds of jobs. You know, I say I want to stand up for workers, I don't want the people I work with in the SU to lose their jobs. It funds the pantry and other student support services and stuff like that. So I really do think that there is a balance to be struck. I'm a very blunt person, I'm autistic, I'm very good at accidentally probably being too honest with people about stuff, but I think that I've really found a balance in terms of building these relationships and being able to be challenging while also maintaining the relationships.
I just want to say, I think people are getting fed up, and if the university isn't willing to have constructive discussions, obviously there's going to be bigger problems on the plate. So they need to engage in their discussions as well as us being willing to do that. And what happens down the line is obviously kind of what happens down the line, really.
So we'll move on to the next topic. The next question says, as a student who has struggled frequently with mental health issues over their time at Cardiff, I'm aware of services available within the CSL for support. Long-term counselling is hard to get for those who need it, and even then it's a long waiting time. This is also hard to get on towards the end of the year. How would you, as SU President, make sure that help is given to students if and when they need it, and that service is consistent throughout the year?
Yep, I'm happy to start. First of all, I think that the fact that currently I think counselling waiting lists are on about 18 weeks is absolutely insane and abhorrent, particularly at a time when more students than ever are struggling with their mental health. I accidentally triggered an audit into the wellbeing services at the university when I exposed these figures at University Council, and they didn't know how bad it was. And it was such a shock to them that they actually had to do an audit into the wellbeing and counselling schemes to work out what's gone so wrong. It's a work in progress. They've hired more counsellors now, so hopefully it goes down. But I think it is continuing to, raise these numbers with people, tell them that it's not good enough, challenge them on how they should go about changing the way that they do wellbeing so that they can support more students and meet demand. Thank you.
I think mental health is also something which is very important, something which I've experienced a lot with family. So my dad's got schizophrenia, so I've been his carer for multiple years in the past, and obviously I support him a lot, as much as he's supported me actually significantly. He's a wonderful father, but obviously he does have his challenges, and I think for me, mental health is something that is really important for people to show up as themselves, and that is one of the core points on what I'm running for. So for me, understanding the areas of the wellbeing services which may be struggling or maybe underfunded or not enough, opportunities there will be something that I'll be definitely looking into. Personally, for me, I wouldn't be running today if it wasn't for the university services, and I think sometimes it's very easy to attack services like this, and I think it's a very sensitive area for people, and I think if we just talk about the facts, the university will react and we will sort it out. And I'll be pushing for that very strongly.
I think in terms of waiting lists and things like that, I went to a really naff state school, and I feel like this is persistent across the board, where you kind of have a situation where you have massive waiting lists, and then sometimes you get to these services and it's a bit of a letdown. I was given hot chocolate for 2 weeks and then told, oh, hope you'll be alright. Essentially, I think obviously we need to bring down these wait lists and we need to do everything to support staff in doing this. I also think we need to acknowledge the roles of societies. I think societies and sports teams and things like that are actually crucial into supporting people when things get bad, but also the preventative aspects that the societies do. Talking of preventative things, I think the SU scheme, Ruaidhrí, had really good sentiment. However, I'm sure many people in the room won't have heard of it, so we need to continue those kind of things and also have personal tutors that speak to you more than once a year so you don't fall through the net.
Yeah, this is something that's really important to me. I've already been working on this with Sarah Liz, with the head of wellbeing, and I've been working on the reformation to what I think is the currently kind of failing system, to be honest, with those really extensive waiting times that are just unacceptable. The university, for me, needs to do better, and this is kind of what I plan to do about that. So, you know, firstly, from the student union side, I would be doing a university-wide wellbeing campaign focused on prevention and support that is really informed, working with the mental health officer. To simplify and also improve the visibility of mental health services, working with the wellbeing team and also the report and the support team to work out how to do that, because the communications on those are currently not where they need to be. We need to reduce the waiting times, and I do that by helping to introduce the triage team, which is something currently within that reformation of the wellbeing service, which would speed up the team, but also increase their capacity. It's something that will be eventually proposed to UEB, and I really want to be there to support this and make sure that student wellbeing and students' therapy teams get the funding they need to increase the service. And finally, I'd like to also expand specialist therapy options such as EMDR, which are currently very small trials within the university but can be really impactful for students struggling with deep-rooted trauma.
I think, given the time that we're at, and I'd like to come to the floor, for individual questions afterwards. I'm going to move on from here. We'll do one final question of these ones, and then we'll do broad questions to finish, just to say getting to the audience more broadly. So we'll cut the answers a bit here as we can, but the final question said, I've wanted to access the pantry this year as I've struggled financially. I felt put off from using the service as it was situated on the 3rd floor and I had to walk past a load of offices to access it. Additionally, the service was only mentioned in one single post. What would you do to make the service much more accessible to students who are genuinely struggling to afford food?
Well, I think it's going to be very easy for us to say this next thing, and that is that, you know, most of the officers, or all of the officers and people in there, you know, would be very, you know, not non-judgmental of people going and using the pantry. But that's not the point. It's about what people's perception is. I think for me, perceived safety on campus and in the student spaces is incredibly important across the board.
Continuing the sentiment from the Ruaidhrí campaign, I think again with the pantry there was kind of a fading of awareness, as was mentioned in the statement, and I think this also persists in sexual health provisions and such. Again, these things being on the 3rd floor makes it really hard to go all the way up the stairs, have all those interactions, see that one guy who you spoke to in that seminar for a bit and was a bit weird, and they ask you what you're doing and you don't know what to say, and those kind of support schemes and making things ergonomic would make a massive difference. I think we need promotion and we need systems that actually work for the people who support them, and the only way we get that is by consulting with people who are using these systems in a safe and respectful environment.
Yeah, I think the pantry is a great thing, but it's definitely not communicated incredibly well. I think that we need to really look at our comms in terms of a whole union perspective. I mean, how much do we see information about mental health, cost of living, tackling sexual violence, being compared to like events? I think we do need to look at that, and how we're actually doing doing it to students, you know, whether that's social media, emails, or whatever. I also think that when we were working on the Heath Park pantry, it's nice there because, you know, you are walking past, there's loads of offices, people are, you know, looking at you. It is that environment in a cafe, but, you know, no one is kind of, perceiving anyone. Everyone's hearing about their business because it's a cafe, it's normal, and we wanted it to feel relaxed so you can just walk in. So that was a kind of really conscious choice as to where we put it. I said, and if students are feeling that way, I would really like to start the conversation about moving where the pantry in Kitties currently is.
Yeah, the pantry started this year. I know for some of the year it was a pilot scheme. So currently it's positioned by student advice, and that's because those two services are kind of linked. We want to make sure that students who are accessing the service also have access to wellbeing support and welfare support and stuff like that, and are signposted in the directions so that it's not just, they don't need to become reliant on the pantry, which obviously if they need to, but it's there. But ensuring that they have kind of other options in order to kind of stay on their feet. But I absolutely take that piece of feedback, and particularly if we look to expand it over the coming years, having it in its own designated space that's more easily accessible for students and is less scary for students, I think is really, really good. And again, yeah, I agree. I think it's one of our crown jewels as an SU. It's something that I'm really, really proud of the team for working on this year. And so I think that, you know, promoting it as much as possible so that students know it's there for them is really important.
Okay, so in the interest of time, as I said, we kind of cut the pre-scheduled bit a bit shorter. Sorry, we'll open the floor now to questions, whether it's that motion, broader motions, all that sort of stuff. And we'll go to the front first. That's yourself.
Okay. So basically, for the candidates, you guys have that's based education. It's a problem, and most of the student population are there in the area. So I wanted to know because there's already a wonderful tests in the college. I wanted to know any other face that?
I'm deeply passionate about this. I bang on about it, but about this time last year I had a rat come out from a hole in the wall behind my bed and jump on me while I was trying to sleep. Very traumatic moment in my life. So I've been really, really passionate about housing support this year, particularly when it comes to the rats of it all. So what I've done this year is I've done a set of emails that students can use, so that email templates so that students are able to properly advocate for themselves against their landlords when they have that sort of thing. And then in the coming months, what we've got is we've got a series of posters, and again, in conjunction with our student advice service, which have really clear steps on what to do if you have each common housing issue. So what do you do if you've got mould? What do you do if you've got a rat? What do you do if you've got damp? I think there's also work to be done with Cardiff Council on waste management. I don't think that system at the moment is one that actually works for students. I think that if anybody who put that system into account had actually met a student before, they'd know that it was going to be a disaster. But yeah, very deeply passionate about rats. Yeah, thank you.
I think firstly, sort of like the templates are really great initiatives. So I would like to work on that a bit more as well. But just a comment as well. That's a really nice point. I would just say that in the area that I live in, when I see something wrong, I go straight on Facebook and I message the local councillor and tell them what I think. So. That's in the wrong silence and tap, so I just said that a bit wrong, sorry. But basically, I'll be very happy to start doing that in the Cardiff Council area or with students. And I think that is also in the interest of the students, and Kitties can definitely do better. I mean, it stinks, and there's spiders everywhere, and I know Ron couldn't be here with him at night, but he could not live in Kitties.
I think building on Maria's earlier point about the waste management, I think we have the council right now treats Gair in the wider area as, I think they class it as like unified households. So it's that idea that if you had a family living there, you would have like 30% of the waste, as if you have a load of students who are all cooking separately and doing basically everything separately. This is again something we need to highlight, and I too am not of Stanley councillors, as my one at home will attest. He might have got for me. I'd also like to thank student media for highlighting this. The Ruaidhry's documentary was incredible. We need more things to point out these problems. All the problems are just going to persist.
Yeah, I echo all of what my fellow candidates have said. I think the bin collection is not up to scratch. I think we should utilise a new Senate coming in and utilise hopefully the making of connections there. I think that councillors have a view, a very persistent view of what students do and are, and I think we need to work on changing that, because at the end of the day, we're all humans who all should have equal rights. I mean, clearly they disagree with the parking that was put through, and that's something else I'm passionate about. But it goes without saying, yeah, we need to make sure that they understand that we need to make sure that we're having the bin collections that are kind of equal in terms of, equitable rather. And also I would say that working with all other students' unions across the country for these issues, because I know they don't just persist here, and we do have strength in unity when it comes to working with the Senate, and I think that would be a really good thing to work on.
We'll go up to the middle, we'll make our way around. So item 2 goes there.
So I've been working on the student union for the past 2 years, and those of you who may not know, there's a Starbucks in the student union, and I've noticed since I've come back to my job in SBA that there are some of these brightly shining signs that say, "Our SB proud is sponsored Starbucks." And as someone who cares passionately about the genocide that's happening in Palestine, I just wondered if any of you had any commentary on whether you plan to support this, and ties to, companies that contribute to that genocide.
So firstly, I think this is a very, very sensitive area, and like I say, I think students' feelings are very important to me, and if they're feeling uncomfortable by these businesses being on site and stuff like that, I think that's incredibly valid, and I think it should be addressed. So I would personally look to get rid of Starbucks on site if that is affecting a large amount of the students, and I would need to sort of get an understanding of the whole students feeling on there. But if that is a feeling across the board, then I would get rid of it. But the first thing is to start a conversation. So I'm really interested to talk about that. But it'd be great to get some cheaper coffee on site as well, because it's far more expensive, and we'd all like to have more coffee, and for the profits of that coffee to be probably getting invested back into the university and not into external ongoings, because for me that's not really my concern, and not why I'm doing this role at all. So I'm trying to stay out of any sort of political stuff. But if the students are voting on certain things and they have certain views, I will be standing as a front on that, and I'll be following the students' perspectives.
Firstly, they didn't pay me enough to do this, but I'm going to plug Co-op. I work at Co-op, and we have a boycott of Israeli products. So for the ease of your boycott, if you want to run downstairs and see me looking really stressed, I'd recommend getting a fair trade coffee from there. This was as a result of the Co-op union and of people saying they didn't want to handle Israeli products, which is something that could easily be done within the SU. In my personal sense, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, this was something that is always in my mind when personally I'm in the office and I want a coffee, and I think I'm personally a quite frequent user of the bagel place. I think they're also much more affordable for students, which I agree with you in saying that they are quite expensive. Personally I haven't heard that feedback to me personally, but if that was something that people want to change, I would be very happy, very quickly very happy to facilitate that discussion with the Director of Enterprise and start moving that out. And yeah, putting something else in place that's more, not only more beneficial to students, but also does not support genocide as well.
No, I've always been uncomfortable with the presence of the Starbucks in the SU. I think it's also worth noting that the TAFs serves Coca-Cola products as well. I think there's been a lot of stuff to do this year, so it hasn't been a piece of work that I've worked on explicitly, but I think I'd be really, really up for helping to facilitate a AGM motion this year to get a proper mandate from the students to do more work on this. I've had chats with other pro-Palestinian SABs about getting Gaza Cola in their students' unions, which is something that I'd really love to see as well. It's been really great also this year during elections to see that candidates have BDS boycotts as part of their manifestos too. I think there's a really strong mandate from the students to get movement on this, but that's definitely something that I'd love to see.
I've already come to you, James. We'll go to Nodi. You're next. I promise you're next.
Okay. So, this is all candidates, would you be willing to get the SU to rejoin Citizens Cameroon and work with them to achieve constructive and positive results of government? In the past, the President of the Welfare SAB and the President of Housing Action combined with the training and resources of Citizens Cameroon achieved the removal of letting agencies much faster than the Welsh Government would actually be able to get them to do. And we're in partnership with business schools as well, or already in partnership with Citizens Cameroon. So would you consider that yes, you should rejoin Citizens Cameroon?
I wasn't aware that this was something that we did in the past. I think that's something I'd be interested in learning a little bit more about in terms of poor letting agents and stuff like that. I think that having support in doing that advocacy work is really important, particularly when it comes to lobbying the Welsh Government to get in better housing laws for students. I'd be up for learning more about that, working out hearing about why we left in the first place, but it's definitely something I'm open to.
I think that where people are living is the foundation of our safety, such that's our space. So I think for me, it's really important to protect that, and if I was president, I'd be willing to engage with all sort of institutions, whether it be citizen or shelter or whoever else, to make sure that everyone is protected. And I think really landlords should worry about the student union getting involved in instances. They should be scared of the legal implications that might have for them, and we should really push strongly to make sure that people have that fundamental, really human right, and have that safe space for themselves to live. And without that, it's actually quite hard to do anything else or stand for anything that you could want to do. So that is very fundamental.
I think it's a very important thing to think about, especially if we do leave the NUS. We're going to have to look at alternatives. We're going to have to look at ways of getting our voices heard as students and being able to be a union that fights. It'd be really nice to actually make a difference on some of these really big issues on a governmental level.
I just want to reiterate, obviously I wasn't aware that we were once in it, and obviously, would be deeply interested in joining anything that obviously advances, the issues that we care about as students. I think obviously housing is a really, really big one, and like Alex says as well, I think, you know, especially, you know, in terms of like the government, I think it's really important that we have kind of intersectionality from many different places, in terms of like the actual, you know, organisations as well, coming together, because, you know, one union, usually from a governmental level, can't do a lot. If you combine the unions, you combine the organisations, I think it'll be really, really beneficial. So I would definitely, you know, look into many different ways, including that, to help support student housing issues.
Yeah, it's you.
So we wish to make the point that staff member that was previously mentioned, Ms. Lewis, has repeatedly victim-blamed survivors of sexual violence, as well as inappropriately used a survivor's confidential police case for reference, and to the point that she had to publicly apologise. And this is Sarah Lewis that you previously mentioned of the private meetings that we've been having with the university board in order to tackle sexual violence. So just want to make a point on that. The second point that we want to discuss with you is that you talk about support services for survivors of sexual violence. Clearly have failed time and time again, you know, when we're discussing the current reported support system that we have. How will you tackle this, and not just tackle this in words only, but in a tangible way that makes an actual difference?
Well, I think the first thing is that the victim always needs to come first. I mean, that initial safety and comfort for them is you know, is very important. So you know, that however things feel for that individual, they should be validated and looked after, and that's independent of anything else that could possibly be going on for a survivor, and from my perspective, you know, let's not validate survivors anymore, and let put victims' needs first before any processes which can wait that long.
I think in terms of the staff member, it links to the exposures point from earlier, of the lack of exposure, the lack of action. We know that there are a lot of incredible survivors in this room, and there are not a lot of exposures happening, and there are not a lot of staff members being held responsible, and that is completely abhorrent. Again, linked to earlier, we were speaking about the court system, and how we have a system that doesn't even reflect the court system, and personally, and I'm sure many in the room will agree that that system is terrible. So maybe the first thing we could do is actually reflect what we should be doing as an institution on a tiny change, and then hope to push for bigger, bigger, better, and more survivor-centered support.
I just kind of want to speak on the kind of the policies that we kind of currently have, and the like kind of tangible outcomes that we can hopefully kind of pursue from that angle. Obviously, you know, I've had to work with Sarah Lewis in regard to mental health services. That's what she's obviously in charge of. By no means do I enjoy working with her, but I must. Anyway, continuing on, I think we need a clear, concrete policy that is survivor-focused, because I think too often people are worried about the implications of, you know, oh, you know, what's it going to look like, or so on and so forth. And I think we need to make sure that the working group that I would like to implement, that works with the university higher-ups, that we craft that policy together. Like, you know, we should be reviewing this policy, going through the sections, and working on the tangible outcomes from that. So we need to actually ensure that that policy is done in collaboration, because too often you get, we need this, and then it comes back in an email that you don't. So we need it face-to-face, with it being survivor informed, with them there in the room with the university executive board.
Obviously I sit on the Tackling Sexual Violence University working group alongside Ian. So I will preface this by saying I have gotten into an argument with said member of staff previously, because she was insistent that we do work with South Wales Police, despite concerns that we were raising with them about South Wales Police's institutional racism. So, yeah, don't worry, your frustrations are shared. I think that, you know, in terms of supporting survivors, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in university support systems in general, but specifically when it comes to survivors, I think that doing this review into student cases, we can also look at what comes pre-reporting and the different kind of support routes that we can take in terms of ensuring the welfare of survivors, whether they choose to report or whether they choose not to. I think there's also a lot of peer-led support that can be done. I think that, you know, helping Stronger Together continue to do all of their great work. I know that I've had conversations with yoga teachers who do trauma-informed yoga and kind of creating a network for survivors so that they can support each other as well, particularly if they fall through the cracks when it comes to the university, I think is really vital.
First up was Brad.
Thank you. This is a question for Josh Tandy, if that's right. You talk about student protection bill in your manifesto. In my own experience as a former student union president on college, what I can say is I was with Centre Members Leagues on the opposition to First Ministers, the President of the University of Cymru, to have changes made similar where I was coming forward to absolutely no avail over 2 years. Can I just ask how you think that this will be successful? I mean, is it not just in the poetry?
I think we all want to see policy which protects students. I think you've got to start somewhere. So by classifying students as a vulnerable group, you're not kind of, you know, putting in policy that's like strictly protective of students, but it's the starting point, and that's why I was trying to engage with that, because I understand that being like, okay, I want all these protections for students, that's going to be unfeasible, especially within 1 year. So I think, you know, that's kind of, you know, where my first instance of thinking was going. I think there's also, you know, power in unity. Obviously, I think, you know, I'm going to have to do research on the discussions. I mean, maybe you'd like to come forward and also, you know, help with that if I do get elected. But I think, you know, speaking to other students' unions, when we were at our conference in February, this is something they were very much all for, those current teams. There's actually something that was brought up there. And I think that, yeah, it's not necessarily like protections, it's just a starting point of making a vulnerable group so they are considered in policy. So when other policies are raised, which go through the Senate every day, that is raised. So I do think that it is feasible and kind of different to kind of general protections. But I'm hoping that it will open that door if we start somewhere more feasible.
Okay, well, Taylor, given that was quite a short answer, we'll go to the back, because I know he's been putting his hand up. We'll take one question, and we'll really have to stress if we have the room till 6, so quick answer for you guys, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I know from personal experience that even with the problems with the replacement list, which are really bad, people are avoiding having counselling anyway, because it doesn't clinically work, and in the worst cases, people with mental health struggles, and it's limited as well. There are people that it really helps, and there are people that it just doesn't. So yeah, there are people that have really clinical problems that can't be addressed at all without different types of structured therapy, and end up wasting years of their lives at uni, and that comes with a lot of feelings that they won't know how to deal with, because they've spent a lot of time at uni and they don't know what's wrong with them, and they continue to suffer. I just want to know if any of you have thought about that, if you have any plans regarding that. So yeah.
If you do have specifics from me,
well, I'm happy to say something as well on that. Did A-level psychology, so I studied a lot of that. In terms of support systems and things like that, I think also for students in that situation, a lot of the things we're seeing are kind of the unis neglect of their situation, things like timetabling and stuff like that, obviously can have a way worse effect on them. I think we've got to do as much to protect them as possible, and genuinely drop me a message, let's talk, let's see if we can work something out. We'll leave the manifesto 20 pages, it's already 19.
So I think you know the services are, you know, clearly not adequate at the moment, and there is opportunities within the support system to see occupational therapists and to get signposted to sort of other directions. But I really feel that you know, sometimes them routes aren't very clear, and sometimes I hear well, actually I am hearing you know, different people asking for sort of different routes to be implemented. You know, so maybe you're not using student cases, you're using the student union and stuff like that. And I just think that all cases are different, and people feel different, and there should be a choice available to students for sort of the route that they want to take. We shouldn't really be debating like what is the best route, because I don't think there is one best route through any of this. For me personally, like what I plan to do to help these kind of people is to try to start discussion and to sort of, you know, be a bit more vulnerable myself in that discussion. So, you know, I'm really looking forward to getting some feedback on my podcast, and if anyone wants to talk over the rest of the weekend or next week, I'm very happy to have them discussions, and that could be by myself or could be with anyone else that you want to invite, whether that be a VP, SPAC officer, anyone really. I look forward to it.
You know, I really empathise with this. Me myself, I suffer from premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD, which means that my mental health troubles are often hormonal and therefore cannot be kind of solved just with medication or with therapy. If I'm in the wrong stage of my cycle, there's no therapising me out of the spirals that I get into. So I get that, you know, different mental health treatments work differently for different people, and that's why I think we need to take a really holistic approach to different types of treatment, from more severe to more kind of well-being related issues. I also think that there's so much kind of stigma around mental health that's is kind of getting better these days, and I think that there's really an element of community care here in terms of looking after each other and having time and patience for each other when it comes to these sorts of mental health issues. So, thank you.
As I said of my point mental health support, I think counselling doesn't work for everyone. I do agree, and that's why I really want to up the university's capacity for new therapies like EMDR, which kind of targets deep-rooted trauma. It's things like that I think we should really be pushing for and progress, because under the NHS is too slow. And while you wait on the NHS, the university will just expect you to go on. Also, you know, during that, I'd really love if the university can actually acknowledge when someone's struggling with mental health. Quite often, they just assume that if you're struggling, you're just at home doing nothing, and then they go, oh, well, we're going to have to fail you now. You should be able to take interrupted studies without being scared or feared, you know, from the university about what they're going to do. You know, and if their support services are too slow, that responsibility is also on them. So I think that's really important. And just to kind of emanate the holistic point from Maria there as well, I think we can again utilise the stocks and clubs in a really useful way. You know, although it's not therapy, it's still very much a supportive environment, and hopefully that can prevent some people having poor mental health.
Thank you everyone for coming, where the time's kind of been short. Just quickly about the VPs and officer roles. Obviously they haven't necessarily had the time, there will be a lot of time for them to speak to you if you'd like to speak to them, but I'm sure there's a little bit of time for you to speak to them, or if you want to catch them on messages, I'm sure that's fine too. I'd just like to say thank you for coming. This has been something we've really tried to push through. It's not exactly gone perfectly, but it's something that we intend to do every year. I think James wants to come say a couple of words, so I'll let him come here.
So, I'd really just like to say thanks to Ruaidhrí, because this is our student union should be democratic. It's not been as democratic as we would want for a very long time. This is the first proper debate that we've had certainly since I've been here. I'm third year now, and I think maybe even before the pandemic. So Ruaidhrí has faced so many challenges to get this event he's dealt with the university, he's dealt with the student union, and yeah, hopefully we will have this in years to come. But yeah, thank you so much, Ruaidhrí. It's been really good.
I actually didn't know that's what I was going to say, so thank you, James. Just quickly on kind of all of that, yeah, we intend to be doing it next year. We intend to keep doing this. We intend for Gair Rhydd and CUTV and Express, for everyone to be more involved, to be leading more about what happens on campus, what happens with their union, and all that sort of stuff. Thank you for coming again. That's all I really have to say. And Iona's asked me to say a couple words, or asked to say a couple words about an event they're holding. So to finish, Iona for you for a second.
I know this is really cheeky of me, but I just wanted to say Happy International Women's Day. So happy. And just kind of in light of everything that we've heard tonight, especially since sexual violence has been such a huge topic, I want to kind of give voice to the fact that we should be also celebrating how amazing women are, and that we're not just reduced to tackling those issues, but we deserve recognition for what we're great at and celebrating that as well. So in light of that, on Monday, the Feminist Society is going to be hosting the International Women's Day Showcase, and we'll be showcasing queer and female talent local to Cardiff and in this university as well. It's going to be here in the Student Union at White Plaza. It's going to start at 7 PM. Tickets are available on our website. It will also be hosted to raise money for Oasis, which is a refugee charity based in Cardiff in Splot. We as a society, and I hope many of us in this room, support refugees with everything we have. Like, refugees are welcome here in our university and in Cardiff, and we're pushing that message, so come support us and
And then two genuine last things, and then we'll leave, is that to keep a lookout for Gair Rhydd's coverage, CUTV's coverage. We're going to be doing a lot more about the election, and yeah, make sure you vote. Thank you all for coming.